The wait is 20 minutes. There's nothing shorter. Nobody in Chicago talked to Massimo Falco like that. Not restaurant owners. Not city councilmen. Not the federal agents who occasionally ran into him at the opera and found somewhere else to be. The man had walked into Hearst's diner on a Tuesday evening with 3 of his associates and the woman behind the counter who walked through her door. Like he was going to have to wait his turn. Della Hearst was 31 years old, and she was the kind of person people called real instead of beautiful, which she had come to understand meant her hips were wider than fashion, magazines preferred, and her face had the kind of warmth that made strangers start conversations without deciding to. She'd been running Hearst's since her aunt passed it to her 5 years ago. She kept the books herself, managed the staff herself, and occasionally covered tables when Carla called in sick, which Carla did every 3rd Tuesday like it was a religious observance. This was a Tuesday. Massimo had placed both hands on the counter. He had the kind of hands that looked expensive, men who did nothing with them except sign things, and occasionally rearrange the world to their liking. She didn't know his name yet. She knew the type. "I have a reservation," one of his associates said. Della checked her book. Hearst's didn't take reservations for parties under 6. She looked back up. Nobody called to reserve. "I have your name." The associate, young, large, wearing sunglasses indoors at 7 in the evening, leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Falco doesn't need a reservation." "Then Mr. Falco can wait 20 minutes. She pointed to the small bench near the door without looking up. "There's a spot right there." A silence settled over the room that was particular to moments when something was about to go badly. 2 couples near the window went very still. An elderly man eating pie stopped chewing. Carla appeared from the kitchen holding a coffee pot, took in the situation, and reversed direction. Massimo Falco looked at Della for the first time. He was 42 years old and had been described in various newspapers as either a successful developer or a ghost story, depending on which reporter felt lucky that week. Dark suit, no flash, a silver watch, the precise stillness that comes from never having to hurry. He studied Della the way a person examines a door that has unexpectedly refused to open. His associate moved toward the nearest occupied table. 2 women, mid-30s, clearly on a first date based on how often they adjusted their posture. Della stepped out from behind the counter. She put herself between the man and the table. She was 5'4" and soft in the way people used as shorthand for non-threatening, and she pointed at the bench by the door with the same steady authority she used when explaining to vendors why she wasn't paying their invoice twice. "You're going to leave those women alone, and you're going to sit on that bench, or you're going to leave." Someone at the back whispered something. Della caught it the second time it traveled forward. "Falco. That's Massimo Falco." She knew the name. Everyone on the north side knew it. It appeared on construction signage and hotel lobbies, and, more quietly, in conversations about which neighborhoods stopped having certain problems and which ones suddenly started. She had heard it from her produce supplier once, used to explain a delivery delay. She had read it in the Tribune, between lines written very carefully, by people who understood what they could and couldn't print directly. Her stomach made its feelings known. Massimo watched recognition arrive on her face. He had seen it thousands of times, the moment when irritation became calculation, when calculation became deference. Della breathed once. Then she pointed at the bench again. 20 minutes. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once and sat down. Nobody in the diner spoke. 3 people forgot what they had been eating. 18 minutes later, Della showed him to the corner booth. It was when she came back to take his order that she noticed. She had been running this place long enough to catalogue people without thinking about it. The fast eaters, The ones who nursed a coffee for 2 hours, the ones in pain. Massimo had ordered coffee the moment he sat, and she had brought it from his right. He had reached with his right hand, stopped just past the wrist, then shifted and picked it up with his left instead. The motion was practiced enough to be invisible to someone who wasn't watching. Della was always watching. By the time she brought his food, he had adjusted his position in the booth twice. Left shoulder slightly forward. Right arm held closer to his body than relaxed people held theirs. She set the plate down. Then she moved the coffee to the left side of the table. He noticed. He said nothing. She came back 12 minutes later with the carafe. She poured from the left again. Finally, you keep coming from that side. Your right side gives you trouble, Della said, keeping her voice matter-of-fact. The booth is fine. I had it reupholstered last spring. You've adjusted your position 3 times. She set the carafe down. If I'd left the coffee where it was, you'd have spent the whole meal working around it. He stared at her. Old injury? She asked. Massimo said nothing, which was, in its way, an answer. She left him to his meal. When the check came, he tipped 40%. She recorded it, thought nothing further of it, and told herself that was the end of that. It wasn't. He came back Thursday. Alone or as alone as someone like him got. One man at the door, one at a corner table, both studying their phones without actually looking at anything. Same booth. Della put the coffee on the left before he could reach for it. He ordered. They didn't discuss anything unusual. He paid and left. He came back Saturday. By the following Tuesday, Della had decided to simply accept the fact of him. The questions started on his 5th visit, small ones. He mentioned while looking at the menu that a vendor invoice had come back different than his people expected. Not specific, just offered into the air between them. Della had kept her own books for 5 years through 2 floods, 1 roof emergency, and a business loan at 12%. She told him what she would look for. He listened with the focused attention of someone who wasn't waiting for her to finish. She charged him $40. His associate made a sound from somewhere across the room. Massimo looked at the receipt she set on the table. $40 for 5 minutes. Della collected his empty water glass. You got a $40 answer. Seems fair. He paid. It continued. Not constantly. Not on any schedule she could predict. Occasionally he had a real question. She answered it. $40, sometimes $60, if the problem was genuinely complicated. Once $85 for something involving depreciation schedules that she spent 15 minutes on and would have charged any other client twice that. He paid each time without the expression on his face changing at all, which she found both admirable and slightly suspicious. A few of the questions were less clearly urgent, a real estate holding structured in a way that made no mathematical sense for him to be asking a 12-table diner owner about. A tax question any one of his 800 employees could have answered. She gave him real answers every time. She charged him every time. He paid every time. It was Carla who said it plainly. He requests your section every visit, Carla said one afternoon, refilling the syrup dispensers, while Della reconciled the weekly receipts. He calls ahead to make sure you're here. He's a regular. He has 300 people who manage his money professionally. Carla capped the last dispenser, and he drives across the city to pay you $40 to tell him things he could find in any CPA's email. Della did not look up from the receipts. He's simplifying his process. Carla's silence was very expressive. What Della did not say, what she acknowledged in the honest part of herself she kept very quiet, was that she had noticed. The way he listened when she explained things, like someone genuinely interested rather than waiting for permission to stop. The way he never leaned across the table to close distance. The way he remembered details. When she'd mentioned her supplier changed delivery days, Massimo had asked, 3 weeks later, whether it had sorted itself out. She had noticed all of that. She was also precise enough to know that noticing it did not make the situation simple. In November, a man named Brett Haley started coming in for breakfast most mornings. He was 40, a commercial contractor, easy in his manner the way people are when they've never needed to armor themselves against a room. He learned Della's name in 2 days. By his third visit, he had brought her a coffee from the new place down the block. Caramel, which wasn't her order, and he laughed at himself and asked what she actually drank, and after that he always got it right. He was kind, he was genuinely funny, he had no criminal organization. One Wednesday, Massimo arrived for lunch, while Brett was still at the counter finishing his coffee, leaning comfortably in the way of someone who'd been comfortable somewhere long enough to stop thinking about it. Massimo came in, took in the posture, took in the laughing, sat in his booth and did not pick up the menu. Della came over and poured from the left. She said nothing about Brett. Massimo looked at the cup. Did he bring that? It wasn't quite a question. He brings me a coffee on Wednesdays, Della said. A pause that contained several things. Where is he from? Massimo said. He builds things. That's not what I asked. That's the answer you're getting, she raised her notepad. What are you eating? He ordered the soup and spent more time than strictly necessary, adjusting his silverware. 3 days later, Massimo arrived with 2 coffees. Not from the place down the block, from a small roastery across the city that Della had mentioned once while arguing with a supplier on the phone as somewhere she'd always meant to try. She did not remember saying it in his presence. He set 1 cup in front of her. She looked at the sleeve logo, then at him. This place has a 3-week wait for beans, she said. I'm aware. You called ahead. His face gave nothing. Did it help? Della looked at the coffee, which was, she would later acknowledge to absolutely no one, exactly what she would have ordered. It's very good. I know. She started to say something. Then she saw, just barely, something in his face that was not performance and not confidence, just the careful stillness of someone who had done a thing and was waiting, with more uncertainty than he would ever admit, to learn if it mattered. She went to check on table 4, but she was smiling before she turned. The event was in early December. Massimo's hotel group co-sponsored a charity auction that showcased local businesses, and Della had submitted 2 items, a catered dessert service and a month of free weekday breakfasts. She had driven herself, arrived alone, and was having a functional evening until a woman named Portia Ashby appeared. Portia occupied space like it had been reserved for her. She worked in some capacity adjacent to Massimo's legitimate holdings, image, strategy, something that involved a lot of syllables and a great many assumptions. She greeted Massimo with the warmth of long professional proximity. Then she looked at Della. So this is Massimo's little bookkeeper. The smile was complete. I've heard so much about you. Della Hurst, Della said. Of course, a small laugh. He really does rely on you, doesn't he? It's very sweet how he supports local businesses he's fond of. Over the next 30 minutes, Portia introduced Della 4 times. To a developer, Massimo's neighborhood bookkeeper. To a hotel executive, she handles his casual accounts. You know how he is about loyalty. To a woman in a green dress, one of his people, he takes care of them. Della corrected her name each time. Portia agreed pleasantly and changed nothing. Then Portia gathered a small cluster near the dessert display and gestured toward Della. I imagine we'll be seeing a lot more of Della in the coming year. Massimo's been discussing formalizing things, bringing Hursts into one of his hospitality divisions. Proper capital, a real location, quite an opportunity. The room tilted. Congratulations arrived from people who hadn't known there was anything to congratulate. What a chance! You must be so excited. He's generous with the people he values." A woman touched Della's arm. "You're very lucky he noticed you." That was where it stopped being manageable. Della looked across the room and found Massimo already watching. His expression was held carefully, the way it went when he was paying complete attention. "Did you authorize this?" she asked, clearly enough that the cluster heard it. "No, immediate, certain." She believed him. She turned back to Portia. "My name is Della Hurst." Portia's smile held its shape. "I'm not Massimo's bookkeeper, and I'm not his project. I own Hurst's Diner. I've owned it for 5 years. The items in tonight's auction are here because I submitted them." Portia began carefully. "I didn't mean to suggest. My business isn't a division of anything." Della's voice stayed even. "If anyone wants to discuss my diner, the first person they discuss it with is me. Not at a cocktail party, not as a footnote to someone else's portfolio." The silence that followed had a texture. Massimo stepped forward, not in front of her, beside her. "There have been no discussions about acquiring Hurst's Diner." He said it quietly, to the room, without looking at Portia. "No proposal has been made, authorized, or considered without Miss Hurst's direct involvement. Anyone representing otherwise was mistaken. The developer tried to pivot. A business card was offered and pocketed and forgotten. Portia found somewhere else to be. Later, when the crowd had shifted to another room, Della stood near the dessert display she had spent 2 days preparing. Massimo came to stand a few feet away. I didn't know what she planned to say. "I know." Della adjusted one of the dessert cups a fraction. "You were beside me the moment it mattered." He said nothing. "The problem isn't tonight," she said. She said it without heat, the way she said things that were just true. "In my diner, I'm Della Hurst. Out here, with your name on the wall and your name in the program, I stop being a person with a business, and I start being something attached to you. A footnote." She paused. "I've worked too long to be someone's footnote." Massimo looked at her. "No, you have." She nodded. She went to speak with someone about the auction. He stayed where he was, watching the space she'd left, understanding something he hadn't had the language for until now. A few days later, she told him she needed space. She said it the same way she said everything, straight, without decoration. "I don't know how to exist around you without other people deciding what it means before I get to. I need time to figure it out myself." He nodded once. "All right." She waited for more. An argument, an alternative, a negotiation. Nothing came. He left and stayed gone, and his corner booth sat empty. By the 10th day, Della noticed she was looking toward the door when the bell rang. By the 14th, she noticed she was doing it regularly. By the 18th, Carla had made her feelings known through the eloquence of silence. Then Brett asked her to dinner. "A real one," he said. "I like you, yes or no?" He was gracious about it, uncomplicated. There would be no whispers when they walked into a room together. No charity galas, no women like Portia, no questions about what it meant to stand close to someone whose name was larger than any space they entered. She asked for 2 days. She spent those days being honest with herself, which she was good at because she'd kept her own books for 5 years, and she had learned that bad numbers didn't improve by looking away from them. Brett was easy and kind and safe. She liked him. She also thought, with the clarity of someone who knew how to balance accounts, about what it meant that a man capable of moving entire city blocks had sat on a diner bench for 18 minutes holding a small paper number. She thought about 10 years of an injury that everyone around him had accommodated silently, performing normalcy rather than naming the real thing. She thought about what it cost to be seen accurately and what it meant that he kept coming back to a place where someone did exactly that. She thought about what he had done when she asked for space. He had given it immediately, without condition. The bell rang on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after he'd last walked through it. Massimo came in without his associates. He walked to the counter and set a folder down. Della looked at the folder, then at him. He looked the same as he always had. She did not examine what she felt about that. "What's wrong with it?" she asked. He met her eyes. Nothing. She opened the folder. Quarterly accounts, clean columns, everything in order. She went through it twice because that was what she did. And he stood quietly while she worked. She closed it. "This is fine." "I know." She looked up at him. "Then why did you bring it?" Massimo was quiet for a moment. He was a man who spent considerable energy choosing his words. When he chose these, it showed. "I needed an excuse," he said. The words were small. They landed like something much heavier. Della looked at the perfectly maintained accounts. Then, at the man who managed a significant portion of this city's economy and had apparently balanced his books correctly, so he would have a reason to stand at a diner counter. "You have 300 accountants," she said. "I do. Not one of them told you this was unnecessary." A slight shift. "None of them told me about my shoulder either." She was quiet. He said, "The first time I was here, you moved the coffee without making it into something." He said it simply. Not a complaint, not a compliment. Just fact. In 10 years, nobody had done that. People noticed and accommodated and never said anything, because saying anything meant acknowledging a problem I hadn't asked to discuss. He looked at the folder. "You noticed and adjusted and then charged me $40 for an invoice question." Della almost smiled. After that, he said, "I kept finding reasons to come back." She studied him. "The consultation fees. I was aware they were unnecessary. I charged you $120 for things you already knew. You gave honest answers." He said it without apology. That was worth considerably more. Della put both hands flat on the counter. "Then why didn't you just ask me to dinner?" Massimo Falco, who had sat across from men who could end careers with a word, who had never visibly flinched in rooms where flinching had consequences, had no ready answer. When it came, it was quiet. "Because I wasn't certain you'd say yes." Not strategy, not positioning, just the plain uncomfortable honesty of someone who wanted something and understood, for possibly the first time, that wanting it gave him no authority over receiving it. Della looked at him for a long moment. "Dinner," she said. His expression didn't change, but she had learned to read the edges of it. Is that a yes? It's a yes. Something moved through him that wasn't the stillness she was used to. Something that looked, for one unguarded second, like relief. She pushed the folder back across the counter. "The accounts are clean." "I know. You made me check twice." He almost smiled. "How much?" Della picked up her pen. $40. He reached for his wallet without hesitating, and right then, Della Hurst decided that she could probably figure this out. Not all at once, not without complications, not without the occasional woman named Portia or newspaper caption that got it wrong. But one honest number at a time. The corner booth stopped wobbling a few weeks later. When Massimo found a wrench in the supply closet and fixed it himself without announcing it, because he had noticed it before she had and hadn't mentioned it until she said it was fine as it was. At which point he had looked at her, with the expression she was still learning to read, and asked whether she'd like him to actually fix it or simply appreciate it, aesthetically. She had handed him the wrench. Some things, it turned out, were easier than either of them had expected, and the things that weren't, the noise and the names and the rooms where his name changed the meaning of everything around them, those were still there and probably would be for a long time. But inside Hurst's diner, at the corner booth on the left, Massimo Falco had learned something that all his leverage, all his reach, and all his certainty had never managed to teach him. How to sit down, how to wait, how to hold a small paper number in his hands and understand, finally, that being first in every room had never been the same thing as being seen. No consultation fee required.